Okay, so welcome everybody, and welcome to this session on ramp up reports and dashboards with David Carnes. Just to give you a bit of an introduction to David, and I'll pass over. David is chairman and chief evangelist at OpFocus Incorporated, and David has been consulting on the Salesforce platform since 2005. He hosts Dashboard Dojo, which is a free monthly training program open to all in the Salesforce community. And David is also a recent addition to the Salesforce MVP program and greatly enjoys meeting groups in the Salesforce Ohana around the world. And the link is in the chat here already, but feel free to go to dashboarddojo.com to have a look at what David does. And before I pass over to David, there is also a link to the raffle for this session in the chat. So please do get yourself signed up to that raffle, and we'll be drawing that towards the end of this session. And that's all I have for now. So I'll pass over to David and let us get into the session. So thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. It's really fantastic to have everyone together to talk about reports and dashboards. They have evolved steadily across many years on the Salesforce platform. And equally as important to knowing what we can do with them, it's important to know what we can't do with them. And there are other BI tools. Salesforce sells a few, Tableau and Tableau CRM in particular, to meet your broader reporting needs. We're going to focus today on Salesforce's reports and dashboards. And hopefully you can see the table of contents, Mark.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Fantastic. And I'll ask once more when I jump over to a browser to confirm. So we're going to talk through getting to know your data. So it's very important, especially as a new report writer within a tool like Salesforce, to have a sense of what's in there, to know that there are a couple of different ways to understand how much data is in there that you're starting with. It can be incredibly frustrating to go report in a new system and go create some fantastic report and get either no results or very few results and think that you've done something wrong when the system may just not have very much of that data in it. So we'll talk about sort of like situational awareness. I think it's a term used in the military. If somebody were to parachute into another place and need to figure out what's going on. That's sort of like what a new report writer in a system should feel like. And we have a few tools. So we'll talk about getting to know your data. And then we'll talk about the all-important settings and permissions. I can't tell you how many systems I've looked in, and many of the reporting features aren't turned on. And to compound that, many of the reporting permissions are not enabled for users within the system. And that might be something like subscribing to dashboards. So in Lightning, each user can subscribe to 5 dashboards. But nobody can do it unless you give them a profile permission or use permission sets to do that. So there are a handful. In fact, there are about 30 permissions that are possible, and we want to be very thoughtful about giving out those permissions. So from there, we'll step into the Reports tab. We'll talk about report types, which is an incredibly important topic. There are 1,000 Trailhead modules, Trailhead badges, and there are 0 on report types, which is an incredibly important topic. When you go to create your first report, you've got this really important decision to make, which once you make that decision, you're kind of locked in. And that decision is called the report type. And basically, you're deciding on what data and what data structure should be included in the report. So we'll spend some time on that, and then we'll shift to the 4 types of reports. The 4 report formats, which are tabular, summary, matrix, and joined, and we'll talk about each one of them. I always want to sneak in a few topics about formulas. They're incredibly useful if you want to aspire to be a great report writer on any tool. Having a knowledge of formulas. The same is true with Excel. I think we all know people who are very good with formulas in Excel, and they can just get more done within Excel. The same is true with Salesforce. So we'll talk about the 3 different kinds of formulas that we can use directly on reports in Salesforce. From there, we'll shift to the Dashboards tab. We'll talk about the 11 types of components. We'll talk about dashboard settings and some of the other interesting features to allow us to visualize or summarize data visually within the system. From there, we'll talk about a few strategies for continued learning. Before I dive in, Mark, any questions before we get started? Hopefully everyone's settled in.
Everyone is settled in. There's no questions coming up at the moment, David. No.
Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about this topic of getting to know your data. So if I were to ask you to please create a report on all of the left-handed people named Jacques in Switzerland who don't like chocolate, it's such a ridiculous request for data. But it would be a mistake to create a report on contacts and apply all the filters at once. And you might get 0 results. You might get 2 results. That would be interesting. What I would suggest instead would be to create a report and just know, like, how many contacts do we have in the system? Oh, okay, we have 1 million contacts in our system, or we have 1,000 contacts in our system. I've seen systems with a few hundred contacts, and somebody says, wow, we have so many contacts. I've seen systems with millions, tens of millions of contacts. That's a lot of contacts. But just knowing what that outer universe is, and then you might apply one filter to the report. So how many do we have in Switzerland? And then how many do we have that are named Jacques? Then how many do we have that are left-handed? If we have that information in the system. But I suggest starting with sort of what's the biggest number possible of that thing. And it gives you sort of outer bounds as you start working with filters to really understand the data that you're working with. So within the system, there are a couple of tools to help you just get a sense of, like, how big are we talking? What are we talking about here? How big is this thing? One of these is this page here. I've got the screenshot for storage usage. And this could be really helpful to just know, like, how many accounts do we have? Do we even use this module? So if we jump into a Salesforce instance here, so I've gone into setup and I've expanded data on the left-hand side, and I've chosen storage usage. And the storage usage page is kind of interesting because it tells you what's your data storage limit and how much of it have you used. So are you close to the limit? And then down below, it will show you for each of the objects or the tables in the database. So each of the objects, how many records are we talking about? So I have 2 different dev orgs here. This one is a pre-release org for Winter 22. It's got almost no data in it. If I were to use this for this presentation today, there are only 50 opportunities. There are 30 campaign members. There are 36 tasks. It's really helpful to know what you don't have. Now, the org that we're going to use for most of the session today, there are 0 contacts in the system. Now, that's a very strange system. There are thousands of cases and thousands of opportunities, thousands of accounts, but there are 0 contacts. And you want to know that before you go into report. So that's what I'm getting at here. The storage usage page is helpful for that. You might also use the data loader. So that's a tool that a Salesforce admin can use, can download and install on his or her machine. And you could do an export, and that's not taking data out of the system, but it's actually giving you a copy of what's in the system. Before reporting on opportunities, I might use the data loader to export data into Excel and just understand, like, what do I have? Which columns are being used? How good is this data that I'm expected to report on? There's a browser-based tool that Salesforce has called Workbench that works very similarly. Workbench allows you to do a few extra things beyond what the data loader allows. You can also start, as I mentioned before, by creating a report and have no filters on it. So you might create a report on just accounts, have no filters, and you can see the grand total on every report and just know, like, how much data do we have in there, so that when you start applying filters, you zero down to what the actual number is. It's a great way to get to know a system. Now, another related topic for getting to know the system that you're working in, some of us as consultants, we see a lot of systems. Some systems are more heavily customized than others. And there's a tool called Schema Builder that is not a new tool. It's been around for not forever, but pretty close. It's been around a long time. But it allows you to see what the data model is, and we can see the objects and how the objects are connected. I might want to look in this screenshot here. I see that I have this custom object called acquired accounts. It has 10,000 records, but on the surface, I have no idea. Is that actually connected to the regular account object? Is that connected to some other object in the system? The tool called Schema Builder, which you can get get access to directly from within setup. So if I were to come into, let's see if we can find it. Okay, so it's under setup and it's under objects and fields. And I'll just pull it up quickly. This is the pre-release org. So I don't think there's a lot of custom objects in here, but you can see that you can pick a couple of objects. Let's say we do accounts, contacts, and opportunities. And what I can do with this is use auto layout, and I can actually move these things around. Let's zoom out a little bit. Let's move these up. And this tool will actually show me visually how the objects or the tables in the database, how they're organized, how they're connected. So contact has a one-to-many relationship pointing up to account. A single account can have 0, 1, or many contacts, and I can tell just by looking at how this diagram is set up. So this could be helpful as you're getting to know a new org. So if you're a consultant or if you're a brand new team member at a company or an organization and you want to get to know the system, the schema builder is a useful tool for that, sort of under the hood, under the bonnet, looking at the object model, the data model. Another thing I find is just over time, just playing, while you're creating a report on cases, why not create a few additional looks, excuse me, a few additional looks at the data and just start to get to know the data in the system that you're working with. All right, so I mentioned, a great way to get started in just getting ready to start creating reports and dashboards is to just take a quick look at the report and dashboard settings. The screenshot here on the screen is from a pre-released Winter 22 Salesforce org, and there are 2 new beta features which we can turn on. So when your production Salesforce instance is upgraded in the next month, these 2 checkboxes will become available, and you can't use the features unless somebody goes and turns on the features. So these 2 ones are pretty interesting. The inline editing of reports is something that's coming along, so it's finally in the beta stage, and it allows you to edit when you're looking at a report that's been run, and you can edit some of the columns within that report, some of the data types. It's not all data types. You can edit a single field within a single record at a time. This is not a mass editing tool. There's another new feature coming out that's allowing us to make dashboard gauges a little bit more dynamic. And again, to use it, you need to check the box. So this is under Setup, Feature Settings, Analytics, Reports and Dashboards. And there are a few different areas of settings that are available. There's a feature called historical trending. Some people love this feature. You can't use it unless you turn it on. A sysadmin can also create report types. And it doesn't have to be a sysadmin. Somebody could also be given permission to create report types. These are the reporting foundations. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but these are the reporting foundations that once they're created, other people can create reports using them. There's another trending feature that's not new. It's been around for more than a decade called reporting snapshots. Again, the only way to use it is for somebody to come in here and turn these things on. So this is why I like to talk about the report and dashboard settings. With each release, you want to take a peek at the release notes, and there might be a beta feature that's interesting that helps you solve a problem. One of the other things I'll mention is that in our system, we can turn off the classic report builder. And I'll just show you what this is, show you how easy it is to turn it off. This doesn't mean that you can't switch back to classic. It just means that you can't use the classic report builder directly within Lightning. So if I were to come back here and go under Setup, Feature Settings, I've probably already turned it off. I think I just by habit turn it off all the time now. Okay, it looks like I haven't turned it off in this particular org. This is the checkbox, and we'll go ahead and turn that off, and I'll just show you what that does. So before we turn it off, let's open another window here, and we'll go to the Reports tab, wherever it is. There it is. And you see here that there's a button here for New Report Salesforce Classic. So this is not the Lightning report builder. This is not the classic report builder. It's some weird Frankenstein thing in the middle. It's absolutely time to turn it off. If your organization is using Lightning, please, let's turn this thing off. This is the report button to create a new report in Lightning. This is that one that I want to turn off. And the way to turn it off is to go right back under the setups, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report and dashboard settings. I'm just going to check the box here, click save. And what that's going to do, and that's something an admin needs to do, but back here, when I reload the browser, this extra button for that Frankenstein feature, it's not quite classic and it's definitely not Lightning. If somebody still needs to report in classic, they can just physically go to classic, switch back to classic and create a report there. So when I reload the browser here, that extra button that's really not that useful will be gone. All right, let's see if we can get, okay, there it is there. So that's now gone from the page, and it just simplifies the page. Anytime we can remove a button that's not needed, let's get rid of it. All right, so before we dive into actually creating reports and talking about the reports tab, the last thing I want to mention is that by default, only 4 out of 31 report and dashboard permissions on profiles are enabled by default. Only 4. So that means that 27 report and dashboard features are not given to the standard user profile. And what that means for us as perhaps sysadmins is we kind of have to stay on top of it, especially with Lightning. So if your organization has moved to Lightning in the last year or two, it's very likely that certain features just aren't available to your users, such as the ability to subscribe to dashboards. So the ability to subscribe to Lightning reports is enabled. Each user can subscribe to up to 5, but for whatever reason, the ability to subscribe to dashboards is not enabled for the standard user profile. So I did write a blog article for this, and I just thought to share that quickly. So the blog article, what I did was take the 31 permissions, and then I suggested that most organizations have 4 or 5 groups of users. You might have end users, you might have managers, super users, system administrators, and maybe there's one other category of this report and dashboard admins. And what I've done is for the 31 permissions suggested, hey, probably end users need these. And you know, the key one to add here for an end user is the ability to subscribe to dashboards. If you let them use dashboards, why not let them subscribe to dashboards? Each user can subscribe to 5. Now, for a manager, there are a number of these that you want to give them. And for a report and dashboard super user, there are quite a few, including the ability to change dashboard colors in Lightning. So in Lightning, there are 14 colors in the color palette. Why wouldn't we give somebody who can create dashboards that ability? Okay, so this is why I just spent a little bit of time on that topic. I did put the blog article. Why don't I actually take a second and I will drop this link into Hopin and stop sharing for a second. Oh, thank you for pasting that in, Mark. That's great. Appreciate it.
It's quite all right. And I don't know if it's relevant, David, but in the idea prioritization that's just come out, there was a couple of ideas around reports, and one of them is around subscribing to more than 5 reports.
Yes, people can't. So, and just on that one topic, so each user can subscribe to 5 in Lightning. Now, most of us, in fact, unless you have a brand new org, Classic is still in your org, right? And if a user needed more than 5, what you could do is switch back to Classic, and you could subscribe that person. There are two types of subscriptions: the ability to schedule a run and a feature called subscriptions, which have been blended together with the subscription feature in Lightning. But you could, if you needed more than 5, you could still send a Classic dashboard, Classic report to a user. So that's still a possibility while we wait for that feature mark in the roadmap. Yeah. So I just saw the question here before I jump back to the presentation. So a bit advanced topic, but at the end of the session, can you please shed some light on how snapshot or historical trend reports work in Salesforce? Yeah, great question. So I will do that. I will spend some time on both of those because they are useful. So in a quick nutshell, just to give you a little teaser, Historical trending is fantastic for showing you what changed since last week. In fact, I wish they called that feature "What Changed Since Last Week," because so many sales leaders, or if somebody's at a nonprofit and they're doing fundraising, they want to know, okay, last week we had $1 million in the pipeline or 1 million rupees in the pipeline, and this week we don't. What happened? Where did that million rupees go? And historical trending, once you enable it on opportunities, gives you that ability. It gives you up to 4 months of rolling changes that you can see what was the value last week, what's the value now. With the snapshot feature, it's absolutely 100% for trending. And we can talk about that in a little bit as well. All right, great. So I will share my screen again. Thank you for the questions and the comments. And thank you, Mark, for your help. All right, so let's talk about the reports tab now. So this is obviously where a lot of stuff happens. This allows us to organize reports. It allows us to use reports, manage reports. For most of us, this is a cesspool of thousands of just old, not very useful, somewhat decaying reports, right? They just sort of fester there. And they don't have to. We can be a little more organized with our approach to the reports tab. We're going to take a look at the reports tab and we'll just talk about each feature. We'll spend some time on the search because this works differently than the global search in Salesforce. We'll talk about the folders. We'll talk about actions. And finally, one of my favorite features is called favorites. And it looks like I've spelled it wrong here without the U. So let's actually dive in and take a look at the reports tab. So when you first come to the reports tab, I want you to be very aware that when you first load the reports tab, I'll actually make this a little bit bigger. What you see that the word recent is highlighted here. This is a list of reports that somebody's been to recently. So the user, myself here, I have looked at these reports recently. This item that's selected over here in the left-hand categories also impacts the search feature. So your brand new head of sales, when she logs into Salesforce and she goes to the reports tab, she sees nothing because she hasn't clicked on anything before. So the natural response is to go search, and she will be searching nothing because there's nothing in her recent list. So I do want to point that out for somebody who, when they first come to the reports tab, if you're looking for something, what you might do is go right down to all reports. And then you can see all reports, you can see the folders that they're in, etc. And if you go ahead and do the search now, you will be searching on all reports. In fact, the word recent was replaced with the word all here. It's a little small probably, but it's here on the screen. Now, another interesting thing with the search is that it searches on the first letters of each word in the report name. So if I search by the word origin, if I start typing in ORI, you see that the ORI in origin is highlighted, but the ORI in the middle of priority is not. So it's not going to look in the middle of words. It's not really a true contains search. It sort of contains by the first letter of each word within the report name. So I find that a little, interesting and odd. I do like the highlighting that's available. And this can be helpful. Somebody wants to find something for the pipeline. They type in pipe and they get all of these pipe reports that have the search criteria by the first word highlighted. Okay, that can be helpful. Now, what we also have on the categories here, we have reports that are created by you, the user, any private reports. So anything that's stored in the private folder is not visible to other users. There is a way through the API that you could get access to somebody's private reports, but it's kind of a nice place to just sort of, if you're running a few queries, you're creating a report and you just want to know, how many people are in this province, or how many contacts do we have in this industry? Maybe I don't want to share that with everyone. I can save the report and store it in the private reports folder. Now, public reports, this is essentially a folder where stuff just accumulates over time. It's sort of like that closet in the house that might have just all the stuff that nobody's really using, and it just piles up. And if you don't clean it out every now and then, it sorts of gets pretty full. So it's sort of funny what collects in the public reports folders. Down below, we have a few more categories. And just to point out, so if I click on all folders, notice that the search, again, the search criteria shifts, and now we're searching by folder names. So if I type in ANS, I will find the first few letters of a folder called Answers. So this is one of those things that can be a little confusing because it is quite different than the global search at the top of Salesforce. These actually work differently. The global search will search in the middle of something. The global search will also search, there's a difference for whether the description of a report is searched or not. So they are different searches. Down below, I have a list of favorites. Currently, I have no favorites, but each user can have up to 200 favorites. It's so easy to favorite something. If I were to go find a report that's fantastic, this is something we should absolutely teach end users. But let's say this account owner by type, by owner and type. If I want to favorite that, I have a couple of ways to do it. So I can go to the right-hand side of that report. I can use the action pull down and I can favorite it there. I can also favorite a report when I've run the report. I can come up and just click the star here to add a favorite. Now, each user can have 200 favorited items, and it's kind of amazing what we can favorite. We can favorite reports, we can favorite report folders, we can favorite dashboards, we can favorite dashboard folders, we can favorite leads, accounts, we can favorite list views. I mean, really quite a lot of things. But what's really nice about this feature is once you favorite something, it's immediately available right at the top when you click on the caret here, the down arrow to the right of the word reports on the reports tab. It's now embedded there. So truly, this is making it super easy to access. You can also see a list of recent records. These are reports that I've run right here in the tab. And the dashboard tab works exactly the same way. Now, the favorite feature gives us a couple of other cool things here. If I come to the down arrow here, I can see all the items that I've favorited. I can edit them, and I can even relabel them, which is kind of interesting. So it's not going to change the report name, but if I want to relabel this, it's like, use this one, Mary, exclamation, exclamation. So, I mean, this makes no sense, but if Mary is the head of sales and she's logging in, I want to be sure. Favorites is a private thing. It's something you do for yourself. So you as a user do it. You can't favorite something for somebody else per se. I mean, there is a way to do it, but in general, it's just something somebody would do for themselves. But now if I hover over that favorite, oh, right, this is Mary saying I should use this one. So now if I go to this, the down arrow here, that has also been relabeled here as well. And I think it's pretty clever that you can sort of sort and organize your favorites, and each user can have up to 200 of their own favorites. So a couple of other things about the reports tab. So we talked about search. Let's talk about folders. So we had a big change in Lightning that we can now have nested folders, and the folders can go 4 levels deep. So when you go ahead and create a new folder, and this is a profile permission, so not everybody can create folders unless you give them that permission. If I click new folder, and I'll call this the top level folder, just to differentiate between other levels of folders. Within the folders, these labels can be 40 characters wide. It looks like we can type 100 characters, but we can't. They're about 40 characters wide. And if I go ahead and click save, it brings me into the folder. And the way that I can tell that, you have this breadcrumb trail up here in the top corner. So I can see that I'm in the top level folder. I can add a new report to this folder. I can add another folder within this folder. I'm going to go ahead and add another folder within the folder, and I'll call this second level, just to, again, show the tiering of the folders. Let's call it second level folder. And let's try to spell it correctly. Folder. Oh, there we go. All right, so now I'm still in the top level folder. I can see that I have a second level folder there. If I want to navigate to that folder, I can click on that folder. Again, we can go down 4 levels deep. Now, the caveat to this, we can have 4 levels of folders, but all of the visibility is controlled at the top level of the folder. So if I come back up to the top level of the folder and I go to the down arrow to the right of these controls up here on the right, I can share this folder. Now, that's another capability that comes with the ability to essentially create folders, that you have the ability to control sharing. When we share a folder, we can share it with users, roles and subordinates, and public groups. So I could say that Mary has access to this folder, or I could say the entire sales team has access to this folder. And you have 3 levels of access. You have view, edit, and manage. I strongly suggest that if you've been tasked with creating reports for a particular team, that you create a folder, put those reports in the folder, share with those users, but only share it at view access. I would only give edit or manage on a need-to-have basis, because somebody will make changes. They think they're creating their own copy of it, but they're actually overwriting what you've done. So all users out of the box can create reports and run reports. They can also create their own copy of a report. So this is why I suggest, as a best practice, if you're creating reports for a particular team, put it in a folder and share it view only with those team members. They can always save their own copy somewhere else. Okay. This sharing also will help you determine who already has access. You can just click on the share button and you can see at the bottom of the page who can access. You have a search feature in here as well for knowing. So one other thing to mention with this, if I were to go to a report, and we had talked about this accounts by owner and type, I'm just going to run the report quickly, and I'm going to save as. We'll talk about running the report in a minute. But when I save a report, there's a nice capability here in Lightning to determine which folder do I want to put this in. So I'm going to create a copy of this report. I chose Save As, which lets me create a copy. And instead of the folder called Exercises, I'm going to select a different folder. In fact, I'm going to select the folder, and I've got this navigation up here at the top. I'm going to go to All Folders, and then I'm going to go into the top level folder. In fact, I'm going to put this one in the second level folder, and I can go ahead and select that folder, and I'm putting my copy into a folder. And this is how this feature works. It works the same with dashboards, which I think is pretty helpful. One other thing to point out is if a user that's saving the report has the proper permissions, he or she can also create a folder on the fly. So if I wanted to, I could create a third level folder here. And save that, and I could actually create the folder on the fly, save it. I'm going to select that as my folder, click Select Folder, and I've just saved a copy into a folder that's now nested 3 levels deep. Just to point out, if you use the sharing, that can only be done at the top level. So if you have, right now we have 3 levels deep of folders, and there could be 100 folders or more nested within these levels of folders. But the sharing is always controlled at the top level. So down lower in the lower levels, all you can do is view. So if I drill in here, starting at the top level, and I drill down to the second level folder, and now in the third level folder, there is a report down here. If I want to see who has access to this, I have the ability to view the shares. I can't control the shares from here. All right, so that's just a little bit about folders. I mentioned this because it works exactly the same with dashboards. So the last thing I'll share from the Reports tab is the ability to use actions. So when you see your list of reports, right now I'm looking at the recent reports, or if I go to all reports, I see this list of reports. Way over here on the right, I have a set of actions that are available to me. Based on my profile permissions, I can run a report, edit a report, subscribe to the report. I can export it immediately. If this report is in a folder that I have the manage permissions on that folder, I might be able to delete the report. In Lightning, we have the extra superpower that we didn't have in Classic, that we can actually create a dashboard from a report. We can literally push this report, create a dashboard, or we can add this report as a dashboard component on an existing dashboard. Because this particular report was favorited, I can go ahead and unfavorite it. I can also move reports one by one, folder to folder. The last couple things I'll say about the Reports tab, we can go to the down arrow gear here. We can select which fields to display. We might want to see the report last run date to determine have our reports even been used. So I can add columns, remove columns. So I've just added the report last run date. And then the other thing that we can do here is reset the column widths, and it just makes sure that they all fit and are visible on the screen. All right, so we've covered quite a few things on the Reports tab. The nice thing is that the Dashboards tab is pretty similar. It's structured pretty much the same way. So if you're comfortable when you come here, you're always brought to the recent. You may not see anything because you may not have looked at any reports yet. So you might just go to all reports and then get going with your reports. I'll just come up for air for a second and just see if we have any items. All right, so Mark.
No questions. Yeah, no questions are in at the moment.
Okay, great.
But if anybody does, feel free to either put them in the chat or in the Q&A.
And you've reminded them about the raffle. That's fantastic.
Yes.
All right. All right, so let's talk about running a report. So this is very, very simple. Just literally clicking on the label of the report will run the report. So why don't we talk about finding a report? We'll run the report, and let's review some of the things that we can do just as a report user. So forget about creating reports for a moment. There are actually quite a few features that somebody can do just when they're just running a report. They can add a chart, they can mark things as favorite, they can view the filters. There's a bunch of things that they can do. So let's go right back into our instance here. And if I go to the Reports tab and I go to All Reports, now here's an example of, I haven't run this report, this Open Cases by Channel. I haven't run it, so the default is it shows me recent reports. I'm not going to find this. There's not going to be, it's not going to be here because I haven't run this report yet, or I haven't in this Salesforce work. So I just to point out that difference between recent and all. So what I really should do is click on All Reports and then search again for the word channel. Okay, there it is, Open Cases by Channel. So I can run this in two ways. I can click on the label over here on the left. I can also go to the right and choose the run link. So either one's fine, it works the same. So why don't I just click on the label. Now when you run the report, you're brought into the run environment of the report. We are not in edit mode. However, in Lightning, there are quite a few things that we can do with this report. So we have the ability to view the filters. I find that very helpful. So if somebody created a report and you're a little suspicious about what's on the report, you can always pop out by clicking this, the blue funnel icon. You can see what the filters are. So instead of showing all cases, we're looking at ones that have an open date in the current calendar year and that are currently open. This is what this is telling me here within the filters. I can close that by clicking on the arrow to the right, or I can click on filters. I also have the ability to edit. I have a down arrow here with an action menu. I can create a clone immediately. I can subscribe to this report. I can export. I can delete. I can add to dashboard as well. So there's a number of things I can do. Down here at the bottom, because this report has summarized data, we have a number of toggle switches. So we have the ability to toggle row counts. So I can't turn off row counts because I'm not summing by anything else. So that's grayed out because this is the only thing that's countable on this report. I have the ability to toggle on or off detail rows. So this is essentially collapsing or expanding. So we'll go ahead and expand this report. And now I'm seeing the individual cases. You can see the case owner and the case name and the date, time opened, et cetera, here on this report. I have two other toggles available to me here. I can control subtotals. I can also control grand totals. I do want to point out that just like in the editing environment, we do have these down arrows here next to each one of the columns. So when you view the detail rows, you have the down arrows and you can control the sort. You can group by rows, group by columns. You can also remove a column. I think my 90-pound golden doodle just ran overhead. It sounded like a thunderstorm, so hopefully that wasn't too funny. So we also have the ability to search. So we can search within the table on the report. So let's say I want to search for Julie. Let's see if we get anything there. So it's highlighted 3 results here where the case owner is Julie. Why don't I search for the numbers 30. Let's see if it searches within data. So it looks like it's finding anything within. So it's interesting to me that the search within the report run environment will search using contains, whereas the search on the reports tab does not search that way. It works differently. So this is looking within each of the numbers, and it's highlighting in yellow. This is a really nice add. You can also see the total number of results that have hit true. So 78 have the numbers 30 together within a column. If I go back and do that search on Julie again, it looks like there are 11 records, and it's telling me that over here on the right. I can also shift down through and look through each particular one. That's very helpful. We have the ability to add a chart to the report. Again, we haven't even left the run environment. We're not editing the report. We're just running the report. And these are things to teach your end users. So if your head of sales comes on board and hasn't worked with Lightning before, I would actually sit down and walk through this stuff to help her be better, be able to make more use of the reports you create. So probably one of the nicest things that we've been given in Lightning versus Classic is in the run environment, the ability to add charts. So I can go ahead and add a chart, and this is pretty instantaneous, except that it didn't, oh, it's up at the top. There we go. It was instantaneous. I just wasn't in the right place. So it's going to give us a horizontal bar. That's the default. You see the grand total just up above, the 177 records. I can hover over this chart immediately. I can see that there are 75 phone records, 75 cases that have come in through the phone. While I'm hovering, I can also see the percentage, that it's 42.37%. That's kind of a nice thing that's tucked into that hover feature to be able to see the percentages. If I come over here to the right, I can control the chart properties. On reports in Salesforce, there are 8 types of charts. Now, some of these will be grayed out depending on how you've created your report. If you have just a regular tabular report, you haven't grouped by anything, the chart feature is grayed out. But as soon as you group by something, you're given the ability to do columns and bars and donuts. If you add a second grouping, you can do stacked bars, you can do stacked columns as well. Some of these other chart types require either one or more than one grouping to be able to take advantage of them. So I can add a title to this. This gets added right away, open cases by channel. And I can add additional groups. I can show a reference line. So if we say, 30 is the magic number, and I don't really want this to be blue. Let's actually make it red. So you see this number 30. This is a reference line that's been added. Probably I'm going to actually flip this on its side. I'm going to make it a column. Okay, and this has changed it dramatically by making it a column. It's actually added the status as well. So I'm actually going to get rid of the status. And now I'm seeing each of the channels and how many records, how many cases have come in by channel. And it's interesting to play with these properties over here on the right. For example, we have the ability to show this reference line, but I really want it to stand out more. This blue on blue is sort of boring. So what I might do is click on this, and I literally have millions of colors I can choose from. So I'm going to pick a bright red, and let's choose that. Okay, now that reference line really stands out quite a bit more. I can also choose to show the values and to see that the values have been added. I think a lot of people like to see values if they can. Now, it's not really clear to get rid of this properties window. If you just click on that gear again, it goes away, and now I can see my chart. So again, all of these things that we've just done in the run environment. We haven't even edited the report yet. There are more things that we can do when we edit the report. So this is pretty cool. Somebody might just add these things and then save their own copy of it. They might also just use this to get the data they want and not save the changes. I do want to point out that there is a refresh button. If somebody's been working on this for a few hours and data has been coming in and cases have been changed, we might want to use the refresh. It just runs the report again. We can subscribe from here. We can export. We can push to a dashboard if we want. There's quite a few things we can do in this run environment. So to show you this list, I actually sort of counted up what are all the things that I think we could do. Oh, I didn't mention, it can be very helpful to know. We're going to talk about the report type in a bit. if you're looking at a report that somebody else created for you, you just want to know, like, what was this built off of? Especially in a heavily customized system, sometimes it's not clear how did they create this report. Right up here, it says report : and then it's actually telling us what the report type was that this report was built off of. So that's right up here in the top left corner. We have the ability to search the results we talked about, add a chart. We have the filtering. We can refresh. We've got the edit. We've got an action pull down. There's quite a few things there. We talked about the hovers. Oh, one other thing that I didn't mention is the ability to click on the, that's not where I want it to go. So if I hover over one of these and I actually click on it, it's going to actually filter the data below. So I clicked on phone, and now it's just filtered to the 75 records down below, and you see that that's still showing as blue where the others are grayed out. You know, if I want to look at the 24 cases that have the channel of email, if I click on that, now the others are grayed out, and the report is essentially filtered within this view for just email. So I find that really nice, and it retains the original data set in the chart up above. So this is absolutely something to teach our users. We talked about the sorting and the pull downs. Oh, there's another interesting feature in here which allows us to drill down into the data. So again, on the same report, we haven't even left the run environment. There's quite a lot of stuff we can do here. But if I want to undo this, so if I click on that same filter again, it undoes. It just returns the report to its origin. And what I can do here, maybe what I do is scroll down, and you see these checkboxes next to the outer group names. So if I select the one called web, then a button appears up at the top for drill down, and it allows me to drill down into this web. So it's essentially going to rerun the report, adding that as an additional filter. And it's going to give us an option here that we can switch around I guess can we switch it around? I believe we can switch it around. Let's actually switch this to industry. I'm going to pick the account industry. So we're filtering it by web, but I want to see all these deals that come in from the web. I have a suspicion that they're all from manufacturing. Like, those guys are willing to use the web for submitting cases. So this drill down feature allows you to sort of hard code a filter and sort of turn the data to look at it a little differently. So we're going to group it by industry. And again, I don't have to be the report writer to do this. And it looks like, there's the data. Okay. So it's basically rerun the report with that filter applied and allowed us to look at it differently. So this is a nice feature for your end users, but again, we have to teach them how to do it. So we've talked about the toggles, talked about drill down. I think we talked about quite a few of these, but again, we haven't even left the run environment. Now we'll talk about the editing environment of the report. Any questions on these features? Because there's quite a bit here. I know we're talking about ramping up on reports, and that means creating reports. We'll get there, but I do want to point out all these great things for end users.
Yeah, there's no questions in the chat or the Q&A at the moment, David.
All right. So before we create our first report here today, let's talk about the report types. So this is the most important decision you're going to make when you create a report, is actually selecting which data are you going to use as the foundation for the report. Now, Salesforce has about 75 report types out of the box. So when you buy Salesforce, you're given a bunch of these structures that you can build your reports on. For most of us that have systems that have been heavily customized, we create what are called custom report types, and they allow us to do a little bit more with how we structure the data. In fact, they allow us to do quite a bit more. But just to point out, these are standard ones here, accounts. So if I create a report using accounts, that's what I'm going to get, is accounts. So I can't report on leads in that same report. I can't report on cases. I'm getting accounts. If I choose contacts and accounts, I'm going to get contacts and accounts, and I'll never get an account without a contact, and I'll never get a contact without an account. And this gets to the concept of equijoins or inner joins. And you can see these two diagrams on my PowerPoint here. Most of the out-of-the-box report types that Salesforce gives you, the 75 or so, most of them are inner joins. When you see accounts with assets or accounts with account teams, you will never see an account that has no account teams. This is really, really important. If we stopped here and talked about nothing else, I'd feel like we were accomplishing something. This one concept is super important in reporting. The difference between inner joins and outer joins, in particular, a left outer join. So that's sort of database geek speak for giving us the ability to say, hey, give me all the accounts and their account teams, whether or not there are any account teams. And that's a different report structure than this one here, which is accounts with account teams, which is an inner join. And you can see the nice little diagram here. Accounts with account teams is this one down here in the bottom right. And in order to have an account, you have to have an account team. In order to have an account team, you have to have an account. Otherwise, you're not seeing anything. Whereas I might create a custom report type that says accounts with or without account teams. And it would follow this pattern here where it's giving you all the accounts and their account teams, whether or not there are any account teams. And what you do when you create that custom report type is you say A records may or may not have related B records. And I created one of those here. It's called accounts with or without opportunities. So that's a very, very different data structure than reporting on regular old opportunities. If you report on regular old opportunities, you will never see an account that has no opportunities. But if you report on accounts with or without opportunities, let's say you have target accounts and you want to see all the ones whether or not they have opportunities. Okay, so this is something, it's generally an admin that creates custom report types, but that permission can be given to a super user and he or she could create these report types. The place where the report types is created is back under setup. So if we go under setup and we go under feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, report types, is the page going to load? Oh, no. Oh, that's so funny. All right, let's try the other browser. How odd. There we go. Okay, so there's a splash page here. If I just get past the splash page, there's one that comes out of the box in these dev orgs, but if I wanted to create a new custom report type, again, this is something an admin would do or somebody who's been given permission like a super user, but you could go ahead and create a new data structure to be used in reports. And I'll just create a simple one here. I'll call this accounts with or without cases. So I want to see all my accounts, and if they have created cases, give me those too, but I'm really interested in the accounts, whether or not there are cases. So it's a little bit of a mouthful, but to do that, what I could do is go ahead and create this. The primary object would be accounts. You kind of pick the one that's sort of higher up in the food chain. So accounts is the bigger object here. And the magic here is on this next page where you can see the primary object. And I'm going to go ahead and select a second object by clicking in that box. And I'll choose cases. And if I leave this, each A record must have one related B record. That's an inner join. You can see the diagram where I stole it from. And if I choose this second one here, you can see that I'm going to get all the A's whether or not there are B's. And that's the one I want for this. So I'll go ahead and save this. There are a couple of other really incredible things we can do with report types. But I did want to point this out because what we can now do when we go create a report. So if I go back to the reports tab and I go to create a new report, that first choice is incredibly important. This is what we're building up to here, is which report type are we using? And you see all these ones out of the box here, contacts with assets, accounts with assets, and so on. And here's the custom one that I just created called accounts with or without cases. And you want to be thoughtful in your naming when you create these, but this gives you more reach for reporting within your system if you have more data structures available. The last thing I'll say about report types is there are about 50 things now, there are more than 50 things that you can't report on any other way in Salesforce unless somebody has created a custom report type. one of the best examples of that is dashboards. You can't out of the box create a report listing all your dashboards. But if somebody creates a custom report type, they can choose dashboards, and you can then go ahead and create reports on dashboards. So that list gets longer and longer with each release, that the only way you can create a report on some data in Salesforce is if somebody creates a report type first. All right, why don't we go ahead and talk about creating a new report. And we're going to use the Lightning Report Builder. So that's right on the Reports tab. We're going to click the New button. We're going to choose the report type opportunities, so we can build a report on opportunities and their associated accounts. And we're going to talk through filters and columns and groups, buttons and actions, toggles, and charts. So let's go ahead and do this. So back in our system here, I'm going to go to the Reports tab. Oh, that's strange. Hopefully this won't keep asking me. Okay, so I'm back in my Salesforce instance, and I'm on the Reports tab. So if a user is allowed to create reports, this button appears. Out of the box, every user can create reports, and we can remove that ability by unchecking a box to the ability to create reports on a profile, on their profile. So if I choose New Report, here's this really important decision that we need to make. There are about 75 of these choices when you start. They are categorized over here. So if I choose opportunities, I can see the list of ones that are available with opportunities. I do want to point out again that these, most of these, like opportunities with contact roles, if you create a report using that, you will not see opportunities that have no contact roles associated with them. Super important concept here. Opportunities with products used to work that way, and it was changed over the years. This is a left outer join. It will show you opportunities whether or not there are products. It'll show you the opportunities. But let's just use this one here called opportunities. Let's click continue. And when you first choose to create a new report, when you first choose the report type, I do want to point out that you can see which report type that you are using. So that's always available here up in the gray. When you're editing a report, you can always see what the report type was, the underlying data foundation. Over here on the left, we have the Outline tab. There's a Filters tab. We're going to talk about these in depth. We have the ability to choose and see all of the fields. So if you're not familiar with the fields on the objects, this can be really helpful. You can pop that out and you can search. You can also filter by data type. So if I know it's a checkbox, I just don't remember what it's called, I could pop this field picker out and just look at all the checkboxes, for example. Oh, right, it's the Has Products column, something like that. So you also have this preview pane here. In a couple of releases ago, Salesforce actually turned off the update preview automatically. And for once you're very comfortable creating reports, you may not need to see the preview, and you can work a little bit faster. If you're newer creating reports, I'd say go ahead and turn the preview on. I actually leave it on a lot of the time so that it's just sort of always showing you a sample of what you're doing. Please, please, please do not make business decisions based on the data in this preview window. This is not the actual data that the report will show, okay? This is incredibly important. I've heard a lot of people while they're creating a report go, oh my goodness, where did this data, where did this record go? And this is just a little bit of data. This is not the full data set. You have to run to see the full data set. In fact, it says here, previewing a limited number of records. Okay, don't fire anyone because there's a bunch of sales opportunities not here. Okay, run the report and then you see the real data. Okay, so what do we have here? We have these column pull downs. These look a lot like what we had in Classic. We can control the sort, we can control the grouping. There's a feature called bucketing. We can show the unique count for a particular column. We can move left or right. We can also remove the column from here. So this is kind of a nice way that we can quickly remove a column just by using the pull down. I also have the outline over here on the left, and I have each of the same columns listed. So left to right essentially is top down. So opportunity owner is the first one here, and type is way off the page to the right here. But I can also adjust these from here. So this is a real nice add that we were given in Lightning, that if I want to get rid of fiscal period, I can just remove it directly from here. And maybe I want to have the opportunity name be first, and I want to have the owner, then the stage, and I want to move the close date. And you can see here I can drag and drop and move these things around from here. Where did close date go? Did I somehow remove that? Oh, that's weird. No, it's still there. Huh. So, okay, that's very strange. So I can tell that, oh, I see it. It's hidden under here. So there's something with the, must be a zoom issue. Must be too zoomed in, but whatever. You can also see these ones that are sort of lightly colored differently, this light blue. If I click on the amount, I can choose to sum, average, min, or max a column. So I'm going to go ahead and sum the amount. And what that allows us to do is when we scroll down, when we run the report, we're going to see a subtotal. It'll actually be up at the top in Lightning. We'll see a subtotal for that column. So why don't we subtotal 2 columns? I'll go ahead and subtotal the expected revenue as well. And so we can manipulate the columns. We can search for additional columns here. So if there's a column like industry or rating, I can add that column just by searching. I, again, have the search here. So I could have searched for industry. It's not a checkbox, switch back to all. And you can see there's a search capability. There might be 1,500 fields available on a particular report type. There might be more, so depending on how the report type is structured. So this search capability is really, really quite nice. There's another pull down here to the right of columns. We can add a bucket column. That's an ad hoc grouping capability. Once we've added a grouping to our report, we could add a summary formula. We can always add a row level formula. I can also choose to remove all columns. That's a handy little tool. When you create a report, Salesforce puts a bunch of columns there. If you just want to blow it up and get rid of all the columns, you can use that and just add the few back. In fact, why don't I go ahead and do that? I'm going to remove all the columns, and I'm just going to add the ones that I want back. So I'm going to add opportunity name. I'm going to add the stage. I'm going to add the close date. I'm going to add the owner and the amount. You see how easy it is to add these back. If I click on the amount, it just remembered that I wanted to sum it, so that's good. Okay, so what else do we have here? We have the filters tab, and the filters tab is a really nice feature in Lightning where it gives us this one within a circle. I kind of like to take care of filters first. When I'm creating a report, I just like to sort out my filters quickly. Again, this number here can tell you how many custom filters have been applied. So if I want to see all the opportunities of all time, all the close dates, but I only want to see ones that are open, I can add my filters here. There's some really nice, powerful features that we can add with filters. I believe we can have 20 advanced filters. So if I wanted to say that the industry is agriculture, I can go ahead and type a column name from that underlying report type. It gets added down below, and I can use the filtering capability here to just run that for just showing agriculture, for example. And again, I can have up to 20 of those. Once you start adding filters, you can also introduce filter logic. So you can do ands and ors, and you can do really complex logic. There's another feature that's super, super powerful. A lot of people miss this, is the ability to cross filter. So this is a really incredible feature. I'll just give it one sentence, but it's very powerful. I could create a report on accounts, and maybe I'm just focused on my customers, and I want to see all the ones that have no cases. So all my customers that have never submitted a case, who want to send them a present or something, I can add a cross filter that filters on some child data. Whether there is child data or whether there's no child data, I can add that cross filter and filter specifically for that. So that's a pretty cool feature. So what I've done here is I've created a report on opportunities, the close date of all time, ones that are open, great. I'm going to actually get rid of this industry equals agriculture. And I just want to see all my open pipeline. What I might want to do next is start to add groupings. And we have 2 different ways of doing groupings. We can, well, I guess 3, because we can have no grouping. That's called a tabular report. We can start to group rows, and you always group rows first. So maybe I want to group rows by opportunity owner. And as soon as you add your first grouping of rows, you have the ability to group by columns as well. So with no groupings, it's a tabular report. If I add my first grouping, it becomes a summary report. And you can add up to 3 groupings on rows, but I could also choose to group by columns as well. So I'm going to do that in just a minute, but why don't I just go ahead and run this now? Let's just go take a look at this report. So I've run this new report. I haven't even saved it yet. It is grouped by opportunity owner, and we're summing this amount column. You can see here, looks like 245 million rupees across 191 opportunities. And I have these toggles that appear down at the bottom. So as soon as you add your first grouping, the toggles appear and the chart button appears as well. So if I go back into the edit environment, I might decide to hide the detail rows and just show it collapsed. That looks pretty good. And you can see here that it's showing me the sum of the amount and the sum of the record count. If I don't care to see the record count, I have another toggle here at the bottom called for row counts, and I can hide that if I need to. So you've got some nice controls here. Again, we could add a chart while we're editing it. We can add a chart afterwards if we want. Another nice feature that's tucked into the report builder is this back. We can undo and we can redo. One time I was bored and I figured out that we could do at least 25 undos. So this is going to remember, if I undo, it's adding the record count. And if I undo, it's expanding, and you can also do 25 redos as well. In fact, I don't know if it's limited. That's when I got bored at 25. It seems ridiculous to test and play with stuff like that. But a couple of other things that you can do now that you've added your first grouping is you can also do conditional formatting. So as long as you've added a grouping and you've summed by something or maxed or minned or averaged by some number, you have the ability to do conditional formatting. So the conditional formatting is not for text, but it is available for numbers as soon as you've grouped by something and summed by something. So if I go ahead and select this, it's automatically choosing the sum of the amount because that's the only thing that I've summed on this report. And what I could do is say, you know, if it's under $1 million rupees, let's make it red. And if it's under 5 million, we'll make it yellow. And if it's over 5 million, we'll make it green. You can change these colors. You can have millions of colors. You can also choose to have no color if you just want to do 2 colors. There's a couple of nice things you can do in here. I'm going to go ahead and click done and click apply, and you can see the coloring get added right into the report. So it's super powerful. Let's actually look at it when I actually run it. So it's real data. Okay, I didn't make my thresholds correctly. Everything is over 5 million. So I was looking at sample data when I made my threshold. So that's sort of a common mistake. This is kind of meaningless unless you just want to see the color green. All right, so what else can we do here on our report? When we're building the report, we have the ability to add the chart. We can save and run. We can save. We can also change the properties, etc. To save a report, I'll just go ahead and click save, and I'll call this all open ops by owner. And let's just leave it in the private reports is fine. I'll save that there for now. And what I might do is just create a bunch of variations of this. Like something that I can think of right away that would be really meaningful is to immediately group the columns. So if I go ahead and group this by stage, so I've now grouped it by owner on the vertical, and I'm grouping it by stage on the horizontal. And if I run this now, it's a pretty interesting bird's eye view of our pipeline. So no one has any large rupee amount in proposal, price quote, or negotiation review. In fact, quite a few of these folks have 0 rupees amount of open opportunities in that stage. So we might be in trouble to make our number. But you can see here, this is a matrix report. This might feel a little too busy with the colors. And if it feels too busy with the colors, I can edit it again, go right back to conditional formatting, and I could turn that off if I wanted to. Just get rid of the colors, and you can see here, this is just a matrix report, so it's grouped by rows and columns, and I'm not looking at the details. If you look at the details on a matrix report, it's kind of too much. So if I go ahead and expand the detail rows, there's just a lot, the data is down below. There's just a lot of data. There is a cool feature, though, if you do use this, if you select any one of the grid items here, Catherine Brown at the value proposition stage, if I click on that, it's going to filter the data down below. So that's a nice feature that they've given us with the matrix reports, that you can click on something and see the filtered data down below. All right, so we've talked about the Lightning Report Builder and creating reports. We'd go ahead and save those and organize them within folders. I mentioned that there are 4 report formats. So there's tabular, summary, matrix, and joined. So these 3 screenshots on the left, these are all the same report. A tabular is just rows and columns. Summary, you can group once, twice, or 3 times. It looks pretty nice in Lightning, even grouping up to 3 times. In Classic, 3 groupings was sort of painful looking. In Lightning, it looks nice. You can choose to toggle and just collapse the data to see it without the detail rows if you want. That example of the matrix report is really nice for a bird's eye view of data. If you show it collapsed, to just show it by the groupings. There is a 4th kind of report, which I really like. It's called a joined report. This is a very special feature in Salesforce reporting that allows us to, within a single report, create up to 5 report blocks within the same report. Each one of those has columns. Each one of those has grouping. Well, actually, no, there's one common grouping across. But each one of those has filters and columns. And you can choose different types of data. So in this case, I've got opportunities with products, opportunities, and cases. Those are 3 different types of report, 3 different types of data. They have a common element of accounts across 3 of those. And I can put them into the same report. It's called a joined report. So very powerful feature. The way to make a report a joined report is to edit the report. And then up in the top left corner, you can change. There's a little black triangle. You can change from report to joined report and then start adding additional blocks. So it's a fantastic feature. All right, why don't we do a couple of quick reporting challenges step by step. So we want to show our CEO how to bookmark reports. So I think we've already covered that one. We can click on the star when we're in the looking at a list of reports. We can go to the action pull down and click favorites. So if we wanted to create a report on, we have a third-party group that's going to be calling all of our leads. We might create a tabular report. So it's pretty easy. If I go ahead and go right back to the reports tab, choose leads. We might just choose the lead report type. And I just want rows and columns here. So what I am going to be cognizant of when I write a report like this is just to see the number 2 with filters. It's only showing me my leads, so I'm going to get rid of that. And it's also showing me ones that have been created in the past 7 days. And I don't want that. I want to see all the leads. Okay, now there's some data in here. So this is a tabular report. It's just rows and columns. I could run it, and then I could export it to Excel and hand it to that person. So that's creating a report on leads. If we wanted to prioritize open cases, we could create a quick summary report on that. And again, if I click new report, and if I go to customer support reports, I could create a report on cases. And maybe what we do here, again, we'd probably look at the cases. We'd probably just show ones that are open. We'd say add a filter for open equals true. And then we might come here and just group by priority, or we could sort by priority, or either way. But this would show me my high priority, my medium priority, my low priority. I'd probably run it and save it, and then could quickly see the prioritization. We just did this example a minute ago, the VP of Sales asking for a bird's eye view of open pipeline. So that was that report. I grouped it vertically, grouped the rows by owner, and then I grouped the columns by stage. And then I toggled off the record details, and that just gave us that bird's eye view. So I'm going to keep going, and we're going to talk about formulas for a minute, and then we're going to talk about dashboards. So I'll just come up for air. How's it going, Mark? Looks like, Mark, you put some nice comments in, thank you, about the unique count features, one of your favorites. I really like it as well. Sort of a little known thing, you can do 3 of those directly on a report. By using summary formulas, you can actually get 5 more if you needed to. I don't know if you've bumped into that.
No, not personally for me, but it's, yeah, that's a really good actually pro tip as well for us to bear in mind. for reports.
Okay.
There's no questions in the chat or the Q&A either at the moment as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll keep going. Whoops. All right. So I mentioned earlier that formulas are fantastic for solving problems. I mean, this is like your tool belt when you're going to build reports and dashboards. If you sort of bump up against something that's difficult or a challenge, just keep in the back of your mind that a formula might help you get closer to the solution, or it might solve the problem. We have three kinds of formulas on reports. We have row-level formulas. You can have up to one of those per report. In my screenshot here, you can see sort of I was having some fun showing emojis so we can add some color to our reports. And it's just using a simple formula. This is basically a case function, which says, look at the priority for each one of these cases. If it's low, show the happy face with the sunglasses. If it's medium, show the green face. And if it's high, show the red face. This is sort of a joke to show the poop icon because case is always required. The priority is always required, so it would never appear. Sort of a hidden joke. But anyway, you can see here that it is a formula because it says FX. So that's telling us on the report that this is a formula, and you can see the results here. So this is a row-level formula. It applies to every single row on the report. You can have one per report, one row-level formula. And the way to add that directly on your report is to go to the columns, and you can go ahead and add a row-level formula. When you choose row-level formula, so this is when you're editing a report or creating a report, and you choose to add a column of a row-level formula, up pops this beautiful row-level formula editor. And we can do interesting things with this. So we give it a name. We have a couple of different types of outputs: numbers, dates, date, time, and text. We have a field picker here on the left. We have a set of functions we can use. And interestingly, there are more functions available than are listed. So keep in mind, I think there are about 80 functions that are available when you create a custom formula field in Salesforce. This looks like it's giving us 39 here, but there are more available than are displayed. And you just kind of have to tinker with it. The same is true for operators. There are only, 7 listed here. There are more operators that you can use when you write your formula. But I thought to just show you a couple of quick formulas. So if we go back to the Reports tab, in this particular org, I have a few extra things in here. I've just got a bunch of sample things. And one of them is showing off a function called prevGroupVal. And what this is doing is it's basically showing month over month, so June, July, August, what was the sum of the amount of won opportunities for in rupees. And then if we want to do a month over month, so MOM, a change, I should have used the RS symbol instead of the $ symbol. But you can see here that 15.1 minus 7.8 is 7.3. And the way that I'm calculating that group to group difference is by using a summary formula with a function called prevGroupVal. And I've done the same thing to calculate the percentage change. So going from 7.8 to 15.1 is a 93% increase. And the way that I get to do that, again, is to create a report. In this case, we're using summary formulas. So this is the second type of formula that we can create. And the way that I do that is I add my first grouping. And as soon as you've added a grouping, then you can add a summary formula. And I'll just show you the formulas. They're always at the bottom here. And this one with a $ change, it's a pretty simple formula. It's like simple to write. Where people get caught up is this prevGroupVal function, which is it's a little bit in the deeper end of the swimming pool for complexity, but not that bad. It's basically saying in the current grouping, take the amount and subtract the amount in the previous grouping. That's all this is doing, and basically return that as a column called month over month change, and the output type is currency. And with the other one here, the percentage, the math is just a little more complicated because we're dividing it by what it was before. So it's the same formula, but divided by what we had before gives us the percentage. And we can see that back on the report. There we go. And you can see when I run this, these two columns. So there is a third type of formula. It's available on joined reports. I do have an example of it, and I'll just point this out. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but just to point out that when you create a joined report, so I didn't show you a joined report, I had a screenshot, but this is a joined report. This joined report has 2 blocks, and one of the blocks is created on opportunities, and it's just showing me 1 opportunities. The other one is also created on opportunities. It's showing me open opportunities. And what I'm doing in the left-hand block, I have the sum of all the amounts that are won by industry. So for biotech, we have 29 million rupees, and we have a win rate of 89%. Now, if I multiply that by the sum of the amount of open opportunities, I could do the math across the blocks. So I'm taking this 89% and multiplying it across the block by this 26 million and coming up with this projected amount won. So it's kind of a clever way of adding another type of formula on this special kind of report called a joined report. And just to show you how that works, this looks a little more like writing code, but basically I created a report. I made it joined by clicking the choice here to make it a joined report. I chose add block and I added a second block. We can have up to 5 blocks on a joined report. I adjusted the filters on the first block to just show me all the deals that I've won or lost so that I can come up with my win rate. And then for the second block, I'm showing all the open opportunities. And then what I've done is I've added a formula here, which basically takes the sum of the won deals in the first block divided by all the deals in the first block that are closed. So one sum divided by closed sum, and then I'm multiplying it by this second block, the sum, and it's allowing me to create a projected amount column here. So in this case, if I have nothing in the open pipeline, there would be nothing in the projected amount. So the math is working correctly. All right, so formulas, this starts to get to the deeper end of the swimming pool, a little bit more advanced, but just keep in mind that these can help you solve problems when you're creating reports and dashboards. Let's talk about the dashboards tab. So this allows us to organize and use dashboards, as you can imagine. So I've seen systems with thousands of dashboards in them. Many organizations, they kind of have a bit of a mess on their dashboards tab. The tab works exactly like the tab for the reports tab in that you have these categories on the left. You have this search capability that is specific to which category you've selected on the left. If your profile allows you to create dashboards, you have the new dashboard button. If your profile allows you to create report and dashboard folders or dashboard folders, you have the new folder button here. You have the ability to add and remove some of the columns here when you're looking at the dashboards, including whether you're subscribed to it or not. That can be helpful because each user is only allowed to subscribe to 5. So somebody can see the 5 that they've subscribed to and say, oh, right, I don't need that one anymore. So that they can unsubscribe, free that up, and subscribe to something else. But basically, these all work the same way that we had before with the reports tab. It's engineered basically the same way. I do want to mention that there are a couple of pre-configured examples. So when you buy Salesforce, it's brand new, there are 0 dashboards in your system. So 0. And it can be nice to just have access to something that somebody else has built. And you can go to the App Exchange. These are 2 free, recently introduced. One of them was introduced, I think, in 2019. The other was introduced in 2020. And each one has 4 dashboards within a pack and a bunch of source reports. A couple of things to mention when creating dashboards, keep in mind that there are 14 colors in the color palette, and you can choose watermelon, ocean, dusk, water. There's so many nice choices. You can also choose a lighter dark theme. These are the exact same 2 charts. With this on the top is dark theme with a watermelon color palette, and on the bottom is the light dashboard theme with the, I think it's fire probably, palette. But you see how it just appears differently. So each dashboard can have one of the 14 color palettes. Each dashboard can be light or dark. We do have the ability to make each component light or dark on top of that if you wish, if you want to have one stand out differently than the rest. When you go to create a dashboard, there are 11 types of components that you can choose from. So when we were playing with the report charts, we could have 8 types of report charts. In a Lightning dashboard, there are 11 types of components, charts, and graphs we can add. You can see the icons here. So we've got a horizontal bar, vertical bar, horizontal stacked, vertical stacked, line, donut. So you can see the donut down here. This one down in the bottom left-hand corner is called a metric. That's the grand total of a report. So a metric is always the grand total. The same with a gas gauge is always the grand total. The output of a gas gauge is always the grand total of the source report. So on a single dashboard, you can have up to 20 components displayed. If you create a dashboard with 20 components, it's a pretty busy dashboard. There's a lot of stuff on that dashboard. But you are limited to 20. You cannot have more than 20 on a single dashboard. The reason behind that is even if you have 20, it just takes longer for that dashboard to refresh. There's just more work that needs to be done to present that data visually. So when you create a dashboard, you're building the dashboard using components. Each component is sourced by a report. Back in Classic, we could actually source a dashboard component with Visualforce. There was a special kind, and you could have a Visualforce page. We cannot do that in Lightning. So the dashboards are sourced by reports from Salesforce. When you go to add a component to a dashboard, each one of these has specific properties to it, and it's really worth taking a look at the properties. An example is this funnel chart here. So the funnel chart, sales leaders love seeing a funnel. Quite often people talk about the sales in terms of the funnel, and they want to see those nice striations for the stages and the amounts of the opportunities that are open moving through the stages. Now, kind of a quirky thing about the funnel component is that it, by default, only shows 6 groupings. It'll only show 6. So if you have 13 stages in your sales process, you better change that property, right? The other quirky thing that it does is it combines small groups into something called other. So let's say that your prospecting stage at the top and your negotiation stage were both really kind of light. Those would be combined into something called other, which to me just breaks the funnel entirely. So you want to pay attention to the properties, and this is what the properties screen looks like. When you go to add a component, you select the type of component, and then down below the properties for that type of component are there. Please, please, please spend time on this, because you can really fine-tune your dashboard components so that you're showing the data that you need to. One last thing that we can do is when you go to create a dashboard component and you choose the source report, if that source report has a chart, you can see this checkbox here. If the source report has a chart, you can check that box and pull through the chart and display that on the dashboard as well. So it will be one of these 11 types, but that if you did the hard work of creating the perfect chart on your report, you can pull that through into the dashboard. All right. Of the 11 types, probably the most important type and really the most powerful type is the Lightning table. The Lightning table allows us to show up to 10 columns of information. We can also show up to 200 rows, 200 records if we need to, 200 rows of information. What makes the dashboard, the Lightning table, unique is that it's not actually based on your report. It is somewhat, but it's really based on the underlying report type. And what I mean by that is if I were to create a report that had 7 columns, normally when I add that report to a dashboard, I only have those 7 columns of information to play with. That's not true with Lightning tables. When you add a Lightning table component, you have access to what could be over 1,000 columns that you could choose and add to your Lightning table. There are a couple of other special things we can do. We can add groupings. We have control of sorting. We can have a summary row. We have conditional highlighting. You can see some of these powers here in the Lightning table and the totals down at the bottom here. So these are just controlled by these properties here. I checked show total. I added conditional highlighting, etc. So there's some really nice controls in here. Before we talk about the running user, let's actually go take a peek at some dashboards. I've got a couple created in here to play with. And let's go to component examples dashboard. So this is a dashboard that I just wanted to have an example of each one of the components on here. So this is a horizontal bar. Keep in mind that if you hover over, you can see the highlighted information. You can also see the percentage that that grouping occupies of the total data set. So agriculture is 5% of this, this average annual revenue. For the cases open by month this year, I can hover over these as well, and I can see that 55% of our cases were open in August. If I were to click on any of these segments, it would run the underlying report filtered for the segment that I've highlighted here. So some really powerful things here. This is a horizontal stacked bar, or a stacked horizontal bar it's called. We have a stacked vertical bar here, and these are both summed to 100%. So that's another thing that you can do within the component properties, is choose to show it as 100%. This is the exact same data without the expand to 100%. The expand to 100%, the stack to 100% will actually show you the proportions. So it's not telling us how many phone records there are. It's just showing the proportions of these subgroupings, the high, medium, low. So that's another nice feature. You can see here the different kinds. We've got another type of horizontal bar chart with a second grouping in here where we're, so we've got the grouping on amount, and I have 3 measures on this. Some nice powerful things we can do depending on the source report and what columns we've summed, averaged, min, or max. On the dashboard, we can add additional measures. So this particular one has 3 measures. We can actually even have a 4th measure if we wanted to when we're creating these components. This is a vertical bar chart, and I've added a second number here as a line overlaying. It looks a little bit busy. Maybe if I expand this, okay, that looks a little bit better just in an expanded view. So we do have this other editor here that allows you to lay over your dashboard. So if I click this, it expands it, and I can actually flip through each of the components individually. I can download them if I want. So this is a funnel here. So I think I'm a little too zoomed in. The data, the stuff just looks a little jammed. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I was just a little too zoomed in. So I did want to point out the scatter plot, which is a very, very powerful type of component. A lot of people avoid these because they feel a little bit more complex, but basically, you know, allowing you to really quickly see an outlier in your data. So this is showing me 1 opportunities by industry total, amount, and count. So we've sold a lot in agriculture, and we also have a high record count of deals in agriculture. We might want to aim our marketing dollars, continue to aim, you know, this is our sweet spot for the business, it looks like. In fact, the sweet spot is actually probably here, this industry called communications, where we've sold so much across 4 deals. So we have a higher average deal size. So there's some interesting things you can glean from these different types of components when you add them onto a dashboard. Here's the lightning table on the right. You can see we can have up to 10 columns, and I'm showing 4 here. This particular one is grouped by opportunity owner, and then I've added conditional highlighting here as well. Why don't I show one more thing here? When you go to create a dashboard or edit a dashboard, if I edit this one, you have pencils. I can move things around just by clicking. It's drag and drop. Looks like I cannot move. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, there we go. All right, so if I wanted to move these around, I can, you know, just click on them. If I want to change the properties, I can click on the little pencil icon, and you can see here that screen. Each type of component has a different set of properties that are available. So I could choose to show the percentages if I want. So that's adding additional information on the funnel. What I mentioned earlier, please be careful with the default of combine small groups into others. That'll drive you crazy. And then also the max values displayed, especially with a funnel, the default is 6, which many of us have more than 6 opportunity stages. So we might want to make that number bigger than the number of stages we have. Another control with dashboards is controlling the legend position, either putting it on the right, which is the default, or down below. With a funnel, I like to keep it in the right because the colors with the stage names really line up nicely with the colors in the funnel. Whereas in many other cases, I actually absolutely want to have the legend on the bottom, and that gives me more left to right real estate on the dashboard. All right, so a couple of other concepts and we'll wrap up. The dashboards, there's something called the running user. This is a really important concept. Essentially, through whose eyes are we seeing this data? And we can hard code it to be a specific person like Mary, who's our chief sales person, the head of sales, or we can let the person who is viewing the dashboard, it runs with their eyes, their permissions. We can also let dashboard viewers choose whom they view the dashboard as. So that's called a dynamic dashboard. In Enterprise Edition, each system can have up to 5 dynamic dashboards. That's really powerful for like a mid-level manager who, you know, a sales leader might have 10 people reporting to them, and they want to look at the data as if they were Bill on the team. They want to look at the data as if they were Mariah on the team, you know, different folks on the team. That ability to set it as a dynamic dashboard is very powerful. We do that by going to a dashboard, editing the dashboard, and going into the properties of the dashboard. So back here in the system, if I'm looking at my dashboard, if I'm editing the dashboard, I can click on the gear and I can say view dashboard as me, another person, the dashboard viewer, or if I choose the dashboard viewer, I could choose to let the dashboard viewers. That makes it a dynamic dashboard. You can also see here the dashboard theme and the colors. I'm going to go ahead and make this watermelon and make it dark, and we're going to see the same dashboard look very, very different. So I'd have some fun with this. You know, why not take advantage of the colors that we have? All right, so we're going to step past this just given our time. I do want to mention a couple of things. There is a, oh, look at that. Sorry about the username on top of the badge here. But there is a super badge that came out, I want to say about 3 years ago. You have to complete a few minor badges related to reports and dashboards first. That unlocks the super badge. I think it's good. It's a good experience to just go create some reports, create some dashboards, and go through that experience. I think it probably took me, I don't know, 6 hours or so to do that super badge. I did want to mention, and Mark mentioned this earlier, I host a group twice a month called Dashboard Dojo. We're going to meet again on October 6th. Because of Dreamforce, I'm not going to do a second one this month. But we usually meet twice a month and just talk through different reporting tools and reporting scenarios. It's really been good fun. I've been trying to do every other one as a hands-on session. So the next session will be October 6th. I think it's currently with the time zones, I think it's 9 p.m. at night within Pakistan. It will do that on the nonprofit pack, the NPSP. So that's just at dashboarddojo.com. The last thing I want to say is it's really important to play. And I wanted to give you a good example of playing here. I created one report, saved it, and I've created an entire dashboard. In fact, I created 20 components on a dashboard using the same report just to show that, and this is a really nice example of playing. So this is the same report over and over and over, just showing the data in a different way. And some of these are ridiculous and others actually look kind of good. So it's kind of a pretty dashboard, but you know, a really nice way to get good at building dashboards is actually to take a report and try it out in a few different ways, a few different types of components. You may not get it right the first time. Try it out as a horizontal bar, try it out as a vertical bar, try it out as a table, and just see which gives you the most impact when you're creating the dashboard. I do want to allow a couple of minutes for questions if anybody's still on. It's certainly been a long session. So much fun to spend time with you this way. I've got my Twitter handle here, David P. Carnes 3. I try to tweet out about reports and dashboards regularly. But Mark, why don't we jump back to you and just see if there's...
Great. Yeah. Cheers. Thanks, David. That was a really great session. There's no questions and answers at the moment, so I guess what we can do while we're waiting for any to come through, because the wrap up is due to start in the next 5 minutes. So what we could do while we've actually hang on. Sorry, there was a question that's just popped in.
There was one question earlier. Yes, that was the question earlier. The snapshots and historical trends. Yes. Yep. So I was going to circle back to that. Thank you. That's great to have the reminder. Okay, historical trends. So if we go back under setup, you need to turn this on in advance of when you want to use it. Okay, so if I go under setup, feature settings, analytics, reports and dashboards, historical trending, it's a checkbox to turn it on, but you have to turn it on well before you want to use it, because the moment you turn this on is when the data is going to start to, what is going on? There's something going on with cross-browser cookies. There's something going on that's funny. Okay, so let's see if I can get it in this other org. I think I had, okay, so historical trending, there we go. So sorry for the switcheroo. I need a browser that'll behave correctly. So to turn this on in this particular instance, I literally come here, check a box to turn it on, let's say for opportunities. By default, when you turn that on, it's going to track the changes on a handful of fields: amounts, close date, forecast category, probability at stage. If you have custom fields that you want to track the changes, you check those boxes, click save. It's now turned on. With historical trending now, that minute after you turn it on, the system will start tracking changes, and a new report type appears. And the new report type, if I go to under opportunities, it's this opportunities with historical trending. This is a very special report type. It has additional features in it. In particular, this thing, it's not on any other report type, this thing called snapshot dates. Now, I just turned it on in this Salesforce org, so there is no data yet. There have been no changes. But what you can see is Salesforce gives us special columns for historical, for amount, close date, stage, any of the columns that you turned on historical trending for. What I would typically do is put the historical ones just to the left of each one of these. So I might literally click on this, drag it, drop it here, and I have my historical amount next to my amount. And it will show you red or green if there's been a change up or down versus that historical amount. Now, this snapshot date is showing me yesterday, but I can actually snapshot a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I can choose specific days. Typically, what I would do with this is do 7 days ago versus today. A lot of times, sales leaders are thinking about week over week, and you can compare 7 days ago versus today, and what you see is red or green, the changes from the historical, if it's gone up or down. Now, something that's nice you can do with this is you can actually show the changes, and it adds a column. I don't have any changes here because I just turned it on, but it would show zeros or the amount. The other thing that you can do with this is you can say, show me an increase in green, which is normally for an amount going up. That's good. You'd show that as green, but you can flip it around if you need to, and you can show the increase in red if going up is bad. So the same is true with dates. So what you do is create this, and you might have this be something that your head of sales operations runs every Monday before the pipeline review meeting, and they can just quickly see the changes. This also introduces some special filters that are date specific or historical. So for all the deals that were over 1 million last week, where are they now? And I could focus on those. There's some nice things you can do. For all the ones that were in the qualification stage last week, where are they now? All right, it seems like we're probably, so the reporting snapshots, you know what we'll do? We'll do a dashboard dojo coming up on that topic. It is absolutely for trending. There are a couple of things that you need to do to get that to work. You have to create a custom object. You have to define the reporting snapshot. So it's a little bit more of plumbing required to get the reporting snapshot up and running. You really need an admin to help you out with that.
Yeah, great.